Good afternoon. Sounds okay? What an amazing crowd. Welcome, everyone, and thank you all for being here. My name is Kimberly Guthrie. I am the Interim Chair of Fashion Design at VCU Arts, Qatar, and I'm truly honored to be hosting an esteemed guest for our Speaker Series event today, and I hope you all are as excited as I am to be with Natalie here on stage. Since its launch last year, the Education City Speaker Series has allowed the Qatar Foundation community to be part of open discussions and knowledge sharing with international experts, figures who inspire and do not accept the status quo. Today's guest, a visionary who began her career as a journalist and fashion editor and turned a startup business into a multi-billion-dollar global retailer, fits that description perfectly. She is co-founder and co-managing partner of Imaginary Ventures, a venture fund investing in early-stage opportunities at the intersection of retail and technology, and is the non-executive co-chairman of Farfetch, a global e-commerce platform for luxury fashion. In 2000, she launched the luxury fashion online retailer Net-a-Porter. The following decade saw her build one of the world's most influential fashion businesses operating across retail, media, and publishing platforms, including Net-a-Porter, The Outnet, Mr. Porter, and The Net Set. Before joining Farfetch, she stepped down from her role at Net-a-Porter after the Net-a-Porter Group recorded net revenues of almost $1 billion. In 2009, she was awarded an MBE, and in 2016 was made a Dame Commander in the Order of the British Empire. Today, in recognition of her contributions, the UK fashion retail industry, in contributions to the UK fashion and retail industry. In addition, she held the position of chairman of the British Fashion Council between 2013 and 2017, and was appointed a UK DTI Business Ambassador in March 2016. For all of these events and more, we are immensely honored to have Dame Natalie Massenet join us this afternoon. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you.
So the best place to start, I think, is always at the beginning, just briefly, so we can kind of build on this interesting conversation. You founded Net-a-Porter in 2000. E-commerce was in its infancy, so what convinced you that e-commerce was the future?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. Are you guys okay in terms of hearing? The acoustics, it's a bit hard, right? Okay. When it sounds like you can hear what I'm saying, nod. Okay. So great to be here. Your campus is extraordinary. I'm so honored to be able to spend some time talking to you. Well, you mentioned 2000 and starting an e-commerce business then. I would like you to cast your mind back. I mean, most of you probably weren't even around, born. But when I thought that people might want to buy luxury fashion online, it was a very different time than it is today. You had to unplug your telephone in order to get online. You had to make a conscious decision. Do I want to make a phone call or do I want to log on to the internet? And you had to unplug your phone, use a modem, there would be this crazy dial-up, and then you would access a website. And slowly but surely, the imagery and the content would start downloading from the top of the screen down to the bottom of the screen. I think we're about to celebrate 30 years of the World Wide Web, and Net-a-Porter was started 10 years into the World Wide Web. And what I came at it from being a fashion journalist, and we used to photograph the most beautiful things in the world and tell them where to buy them. And what I found out was that the magazines were always thinking about what was next, but the stores were always thinking about what came before, what sold well. And in the middle, you had a consumer who was very frustrated, wanted to buy the latest fashions, but the stores weren't taking the risks on those products. And as a journalist, for me, my dream was that you could tell women what was beautiful and important to buy, and that at the click of a button, they would be able to access it and then have it delivered no matter where they were in the world. And the internet at the time, which was Amazon was just a few years old, and everyone was talking about, oh, it's incredible, you don't have to go to stores anymore, you can shop online. I thought, wow, this is an amazing opportunity to start a store that has one location, but that serves the whole world. And I was a naive, but imaginative person who thought, oh, it would be probably pretty easy to do this. And 15 years into it, I realized that it's not easy to start a business. It's certainly not easy to start an entire market, but it was a very, very fulfilling journey. And I think the internet that we all know today, the way that we shop on mobile, is a very different place than it was in 2000.
Great. So a lot of what you've been speaking about recently with your transition is the tech and the logistics platforms that power the best e-commerce have new decentralized business models. I've heard you mention that several times. And if you were to start an e-commerce company today, I was wondering how you might do that differently, knowing with all the data aggregation.
Well, I'm very fortunate that today I'm involved with Farfetch, which I'm assuming all of you know about and shop on Farfetch. Farfetch is a completely different model, which is it connects all of the inventory in the world's most beautiful boutiques and all of the inventory in the world's stores. So if you think about Gucci on Avenue Montaigne, about Fendi on Madison Avenue, about Valentino on Mount Street, all of that inventory in all those stores is connected into one centralized database and then made available to customers wherever they are. And that's a very different way of doing business than when I started, where, first of all, we had to convince the brands that they should be sold through a digital medium. And we held all of the inventory in one location, and then we shipped it to the whole world. And so from a logistical standpoint, I think today's businesses are looking at different ways of connecting what already exists with the infinite possibility of customers around the world. And also in the work that I've started doing, investing in other entrepreneurs' business, young people who have a vision, who think that a brand or a business should address customer needs in a completely different way, whether it's to create sizing, inclusive sizing for fashion brands, or whether it's to look at different ingredients in food and beverage companies, or to look at the way that people recommend products. All these young entrepreneurs that have these brave, bold ideas, I'm able to get involved in them through the venture fund Imaginary.
You describe yourself as a fashion person obsessed with technology, which I think is a beautiful combination. And as we all know, fashion and technology are really electrifying what's going on right now across the globe. We've got AI, VR, blockchain. I mean, 20 years ago, you probably wouldn't put blockchain and Balmain in the same sentence, and now it's kind of a conversation you have to have. So I want to know if you had a fashion magic wand, and how would you use that fashion magic wand to use fashion in a positive way to really make some type of impact globally and not just with the consumer and then seep into the global landscape?
Well, I think that there are a lot of people who are thinking today about the fashion industry and our place in the world. And fashion can do a lot of good. At its very core, fashion is transformative, and it can allow you as an individual to express yourself and to tell the world who you are. But it is an industry that employs millions of people. As chairman of the British Fashion Council, we quantified what the fashion industry was worth to the British economy, and by the time I left, it was $28 billion, which was contributed to the British economy, and it was growing faster than any of the other businesses, and was a larger business than the automotive industry in the UK, and employed so many people. So I think that fashion is also an enormous employer, and as a creative business, I believe, if you have to go to work, it's an amazing thing to be able to work in an industry, if you're a creative person, where creativity is supported. I think the way that the fashion business has traditionally grown has unfortunately been highlighted in the last few years as being not championing sustainability, work practices, and the industry has woken up to this cry for change. And the businesses that are starting today and the ones that will survive that start today are ones who have sustainability at their heart. Via Imaginary, our venture fund, we've backed a company called Everlane, which I don't know if you guys know about it, based in California, which is all about radical transparency. And they believe that they will share with their consumers where and how a product has been made, and so that you can see how they determine the pricing of the product, and what kind of fabrics they're using. And as it turns out, the consumer is very happy to shop with a brand that has this mission at the core of their being. In the end, most fashion businesses are not reinventing the wheel in terms of what they're making. They're making clothing. No one is inventing the three-legged trouser. But I think the consumer today, where they're looking for innovation, is in manufacturing practices, employment practices, transparency. All of the things that are affecting our lives as individuals, the transparent life we live today on Instagram, on Facebook, is affecting companies. And I think if I could wave my magic wand, companies would be less afraid of losing customers because they are raising their prices or changing the way they work, and therefore they have to slow down some of the innovation, and that they would actually embrace the new customer and the new revenue stream that they could have by thinking differently.
Sure, there's lots of young people out here thinking, oh, what pitch can I give to Farfetch? And they would take on my brand or my product. And so the question here is, what is the secret sauce? What is the secret sauce that Glossier has, that Everlane has, that you all just knew, yes, no problem, we're going to back you guys, or work with you guys?
Well, I think, to the students in the room, if you dream about doing something that a consumer may one day buy, you have to create something that you love, first of all, that you believe in, that you're proud of, and that doesn't exist already. I think too many people, too many companies these days, and we can all point at them, just do the same thing as everybody else. And that doesn't really give your consumer a reason to shop with you. And then you have to rely on pricing to differentiate yourself, or to be cheaper. And then back to our point about sustainability in the workforce, if your entire reason for being is to be cheaper than somebody else, someone along the supply chain is losing. And so I think you have to create a product that you really love and that is different from everybody else. And that takes courage. But if you like it, chances are someone else is going to like it. When I sat down to create Net-a-Porter to shop online, everybody, even my friends, were like, "Are you crazy? Shopping on a computer?" And all I had to rely on was my instinct that this is how I wanted to shop. I was at home. I had just left a job as a journalist. I was a freelance journalist. Last thing I wanted to do was work. I wanted to shop. And so I was turned to the computer, and everyone was talking about how you could shop online. And I was like, great, I'm at home right now. I'm supposed to be working, but I want to shop. And so when people said, how do you know that people are going to want to do this? And I was like, well, I want to do it. So I think with you guys, when you start something, at the very least, it should be something that you would love and that you would pay for. And you have to have very Today's companies that are succeeding are, and this is great news for all the creative people in the room, are being launched by creative people who have skills in communication, in marketing, in design. We're seeing all of the strongest, even if you think about Apple, this was a business that was started by a marketing visionary, a product visionary, somebody who thought about the consumer. And these companies are now being led by these types of people, and then they fill their organizations with people who can help support and run an organization, whether it's in finance, in operations. And if you go back 50 years, the businesses that were thriving were started more from a financial and operational perspective. So there's never been a better time to be a creative thinker. And if you're creative and you think about a consumer, and you have a pretty good chance of succeeding in today's world. If you think about Glossier, Emily Weiss started this beauty company by being a storyteller. She had a blog called Into the Gloss, and she took and talked about what was right and wrong about different products and gained trust with her consumer, so much so that she was able to turn around and create her own product. Again, this started a business that was recently valued at over $1 billion, started from a creative communicator.
Things are just, the whole shopping experience is so dynamic, and you really were at the forefront of disrupting fashion, and you use luxury fashion to really disrupt fashion. And I was wondering, what do you think the next level of disruption might be, and how can these next new emerging entrepreneurs prepare for that next disruption?
Well, I think that the disruption is coming at us from every level, whether it's the channel or whether a distribution channel or the marketing channel, and where there's all this choice, whether it's to do something on a mobile, on the internet, in stores. I mean, stores are not dead. I think stores just need to be rethought in terms of how you entertain your consumer who's taken the time to come to you. All the different channels are either evolving or need to be readdressed. And I think for anyone who has an idea to, whether it's to do something on a mobile phone or in a store or on a product level, I think there's never been so much opportunity. I also think that by virtue of being able to reach a global audience, you can focus on one thing and do one thing very, very well. You can be, we were just talking in some of the classrooms, you don't have to come out of the bat and be a fashion brand that is doing ready-to-wear, outerwear, knitwear, handbags, shoes. You don't have to be, if you talk about other industries, a restaurant that serves breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and dessert. I think where we're seeing the most disruption is where people are picking one category and they're saying, I'm going to do this really, really well, and then I'm going to use the internet and global distribution to reach as many people as I can for this one product. Whereas in the past, people grew their businesses by trying to be all things to all people. And I think now you can be one very specific thing for the group of people who you're talking to. And that's super exciting, because you don't have to be an expert in everything. You can just focus on one thing.
You can't, like you said, you can't be the creative and you can't be the business. And I really respect and appreciate how when you answer a lot of your questions, when you're being interviewed, you always use the word we and not me so much. And I think it would be great if you could stress upon the students here that how important collaboration is and in working in teams, because they kind of find themselves being insular, and just kind of tell them how important it is throughout your career, how you've had to rely on other people to kind of take you along.
Well, I'm sure you have it on your posters. There's no I in team. And I don't think, unless you're going to be a solo rower and you want to row, around the world by yourself in your boat, there are very few industries and businesses that were started by just one person. I think we get so much further in terms of collaboration. First of all, there's a whole trend towards the collaboration economy, which is that, I mean, if you look at Farfetch, for example, it's not a retailer that buys product and sells product to its customer. It is a platform that has connected all sorts of competing boutiques and brands into one place, and together they serve the customer. In an organization, I think it's very rare to have one person who's a whiz at systems and supply chain and finance, and also can write pithy copy and understand everything about social media. It really does take different skill sets. And I'm a big believer in yin and yang and balance, and organizations that are in balance and individuals that are in balance. And an organization relies on people who think differently, who are not the same as they are. And I mean, even for every business that I've been involved in, I've thought, well, what do I do? What do I do well? And then what don't I do well? Which is a very long list of things. And then I go about finding people who like the vision, and we get united around the vision. But we all approach the problem with different skill sets. And today, as students, you should look around the room, and you should look around this extraordinary group of campuses and find people who maybe have the same vision as you for something that you'd like to do, and get together as a team and build a business together. I mean, I loved musicals, and there was a thing in old school musicals where they would say, oh, you can sing, and you put on the stage, and we'll put on a show. And I think starting a business is a bit like a musical, where you need to have the soprano and the bass singer, and it's an orchestra, and together you make amazing music. I mean, I cannot emphasize team. And if you meet people who say things like I, stay away from them, because chances are you are going to do the work and they are going to take the credit.
Exactly right. You didn't get to where you are now without taking risks. So being the risk taker that you are, and I know that this Gen Z, they are risk takers as well, but what advice can you give them? What are the risks that are worth taking, like in the next 2 to 3 years, as they're looking out into their future?
I never think that I've taken risks, first of all. I think that a lot of people have a very acute sense of intuition, and that intuition is there's nothing terribly magic about it. Is you're observant. You look at the world, you look at trends, you look at consumers, you think about this is missing, or if I'm shopping online for books, maybe I'll shop online for other categories. There's no clairvoyance in it, and therefore I don't think it's a risk. I think the risk that we all share is of not doing something. And just because something doesn't exist doesn't mean it can't exist. And if you ask people if they want something that doesn't exist already, they don't know how to answer that. So most people will actually talk you out of doing something that doesn't exist because they don't know. But if you think something should exist, or if you've looked around and you've spotted an opportunity and no one else is doing it, then that's where it is the least risky thing, because that's an opportunity. So I think being aware, looking at the market, thinking about things. Again, thinking about what you want and how are you underserved in a special area, and then going about and doing it. One of the businesses that we've invested in is called Universal Standard, and it is a business that wants to see the end of sizing, and it champions size inclusivity. And the founder was desperate to wear Celine and all the most beautiful clothes in the world, but they were just not made for her size. And today, 70% of the female consumer cannot buy fashion in their size. If you are a business owner and you're in the business of selling clothes, why would you turn away 70% of your potential market? It doesn't make any sense. And something like that, where she decided to go and start a business that served 100% of the customers, is not risk-taking. It's just a really great idea that is serving the customer. So, and people will then interview you on stage years later and go, well, how did you know to take the risk? And it's like, well, actually, it was just a very obvious idea, but no one else was doing it. And therefore, everyone believed that it couldn't be done.
That's fantastic. I've heard you use this word, Synchro Destiny. Can you just beef that definition up for me just a little bit more and how it relates to what you've been doing, what you plan on doing in the next few years?
Synchro Destiny is when you find yourself in an opportunity, an event, a place, a location, sitting across from someone, reading a book, walking down the street, and you realize that what you're thinking about, the other person is thinking about, or somebody's there that can help you to achieve your goal. I mean, I'm a really big believer that if you put your goal out and you articulate it to your friends, you articulate it to yourself, that if you start listening and watching, there are opportunities around us all the time that, I mean, I met one of my first investors, was looking for a business like Net-a-Porter, and we were brought together, and I always say it's like Synchro Destiny, like we were meant to meet. And but then, the flip side of that is once you have a magical moment like that with the opportunities, what you do with it. It's not enough to go like, oh, this is kind of crazy, we had the same idea at the same time. Success comes when you pay attention to the coincidences and then you act on it, and you're bold and courageous to take the chance to do something. Maybe say to somebody, hey, we had the same idea, should we join forces and do it together? Or I've just met somebody who holds the key to something I've been thinking about, you know, having the courage to ask them about the help. You may find that it's Synchro Destiny for the person on the other side of the table.
I think they always say you don't meet someone for a reason. There is no such thing as coincidence. I think it kind of goes along the same kind of mindset. Yes.
Completely.
So I could hog you the whole time and talk about fashion, but I know that there are other things that the audience would like to hear about other than fashion. So we have time now to open the floor for questions. So we have a few mics floating around. So if you all have a question, if you could just raise your hand.
First, I would like to welcome you back to Doha. It's always a pleasure to have you back here. Actually, my question, I have two questions, actually. I will take you through it. Do you think online shopping will replace the stores at some point in terms of like consumer behavior and the environment that actually provided? The reason why I'm asking, because 8 years ago, the online or the web behaving in such a developed way that actually if you can purchase one items, it can can really give you preference of, you hear me, right?
I got up until, do you think
Okay.
online shopping will replace offline?
So
and then
yeah. So basically what I was saying, 8 years ago, the web developing have been starting to identify if you purchase one items, it can indicate what is your style, which actually it gives you options immediately. So it kind of replaced the salesman in the store when you choose something and then he know immediately your style, so he starts showing you different options. Why I'm asking you this, because when you think about how generation behave, like millennials, they are very quick, they are very they would like to purchase things online, but the Gen Z generation, they are very environmental, less spending energy and stuff like that. How you develop the strategy in terms of how the generation behave?
Okay. Let me see if I think I understood your question. Can I just answer the first part that I know I heard, which is, will online shopping replace offline shopping? I think that the potential for online shopping, digital shopping, connectivity is limitless. I mean, I think we are going to see extraordinary growth in that area. I think we're going to see new businesses, new ways of shopping online, digitally, connecting consumers with each other, with inventory. I think we haven't seen anything yet. Having said that, I believe that offline shopping is just as important. And we at Imaginary invest in direct-to-consumer brands, but we like to have another definition for direct-to-consumer, which is to be where the consumer is. So I think that if the consumer is walking down the street, of course they're going to want to shop in a store, and then it's the store's responsibility to make it as exciting, to have service in mind. The simplicity of shopping online and the information that you get from shopping online is unparalleled. So if you're going to have a store, you need to match the experience and make it better. The second part of your question, it was hard to understand, and I really apologize if you guys haven't been able to hear us. The drawback of having such a beautiful space is the acoustics are challenging. I think you were talking about sustainability in terms of shipping, is that correct? Yep.
So you have the millennials generation where they're everything quick, they want to buy online and stuff like that. But the new generation, the Gen Z generation, they are more environmental, less spending energy, stuff like that. How do you have a strategy?
So I think that people are, you're talking about the speed with which people want product, but that is, runs contrary to the values that the new consumer has of wanting to protect the environment and so on. I think what we're going to see is an increasing amount of connectivity in local markets, which we're seeing obviously in the food industries. In the United States, we have Postmates, which allows you to connect the food in a local restaurant to your living room. And so I think we're going to continue to see e-commerce and digital and service serving the groups around you. I don't think the consumer is ever going to get bored of this incredible service of product that comes to you. But I think we're going to be rethinking the distances that the product travels. I think we're going to see opportunities in local manufacturing, which connects the product with local consumer. And maybe the luxury brand of the future will not have a flagship store in every city, but will have a manufacturing center in every city that allows you to buy that locally made product. That doesn't exist today, but that would be a great idea, I think.
Okay, my question is that we heard your advice to students planning to start their own fashion business. I would like to have your advice for existing entrepreneurs to get a call back from platforms like Net-a-Porter, given that for sure they get approached by hundreds of new talents. And does Net-a-Porter have a formal policy for supporting emerging talents around the world?
Well, when I was at Net-a-Porter, you could have emailed me, and I would have expected for you to send me a cover letter about who you are, what you stand for, with some very good pictures of your product. And if I opened that email, you had about a 30-second opportunity for me to say, get that girl on the phone, let's meet with her. If the information in that opening email is not clear or beautiful, then I would look at it, but then I wouldn't necessarily reach out. I'm no longer there, so I don't know how they operate anymore. But I think that that's a rule for life, which is reach out, but make sure that when you reach out, you give them a reason to call you back.
Actually, I wanted to ask something. I think that it's very, very important for most businesses, and it's the after-sales aspects, or the after-sales customer care. So what are your thoughts about this, especially that you were selling luxurious brands, and of course people are paying a lot of money for those brands, so they would expect to have some sort of after-sales care. And what are the coincidence, or what is the stories that you can share with us, any of your previous encounters with customers and about after-sales customer care? Thank you.
Well, I think that customer care if you're in business, you're in the business of caring for your customer. And a lot of companies start thinking about the product, but they don't think about the customer service. And the customer service is the single most important thing that you can have after product, and I would even put product as part of customer care. I could not be a bigger customer champion. And when I used to do customer service myself, and I would answer emails in the early days. And I think that we used to say, have a zero customer defection policy. Every single every single person who has come to your business and decided to give you money for what you have to treat them like royalty. You have to jump, they ask you to jump, how high do you want me to jump? You want this product delivered where? I'll deliver it there. You want to shop 24 hours a day? We're open 24 hours a day. You want me, anything that you want, you should have. And in fact, the businesses that succeed today are the ones that have a dialogue with their customer. And they listen. And a problem that a customer might have turns into an opportunity, a new strategy to improve your company, whether it's to improve your products, to stop using plastic, whether it's to deliver to a certain city that maybe you didn't have in your delivery route. I'm not going to go into any particular examples right now, but there's never been a moment where the customer is not the most important person in an organization. And if, in fact, there's room for people to start customer service companies, because a lot of the businesses that we all encounter as customers do not serve their customers as well as they should.
Hello, can you hear me well?
Hello.
Hi. My name is Ponce. I'm a graduating business administration senior from Carnegie Mellon here. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on how brands have been driving to commercialize as much as possible. And by that I mean thinking about the customer, like you said, trying to trigger some kind of emotional reaction to make the purchase as soon as possible. And that's mostly through social media and social media influencers, and how that's been very successful to the extent that most of the marketing budgets are going towards the pockets of those fashion influencers so people can make the purchases. So I was wondering where you think that culture is going, and whether you think there's going to eventually be a negative impact on online shopping caused by possibly people starting to trust less and less of this content put out there to trigger their purchases.
Well, I think that influencer marketing is another word for advertising. And I think the consumer is smart enough to know that one message is an advertisement. You can still be completely seduced by an advertisement when you open a magazine, when you walk down the street and you see a billboard. You know it's an ad. And then it's about, is the message compelling? Is the product good enough? It's gotten your attention. And I think influencer marketing is a way for brands today to get your attention as a consumer. So I think when we talk about the backlash against it, I think we have to say we're talking about a backlash against advertising, and I don't think advertising is going to go anywhere. And I think if you're a person who can sell millions of dollars of product just by wearing it, good on you. You know, amazing. What an amazing way to make money. I think that there are other ways to get the message across using social media. One of the businesses that we've invested in, started by two women that just launched a few months ago, is actually addressing this and saying they've created a search engine almost populated by people. So it's called Mass, M-A-S-S-E, it's brand new. And all of the product recommendations on there are from friends and users. And you can go on there and say, I need a new suitcase. And then people will answer free of charge what they like. And this is, ordinary people just recommending what they like. And so you can see that for every trend, there can be a counter trend. And what is exciting, though, is that for companies that traditionally grew solely from advertising, they now have platforms where the ordinary consumer will speak on your behalf if they like what you're doing. And, we all do it. We all go on to Instagram and tell our friends if we had a good experience somewhere. And before social media, brands had to pay an extraordinary amount. They only had advertising as a way of getting our attention, or service, customer service. But I think it's a very exciting time to be a brand because you do have the opportunity to leverage both paid advertising and earned advertising media.
So last month, Farfetch announced that you'd be working on a white label solution, e-commerce solution for Harrods, correct? So how would you make sure that this experience online would be unique and something that offers the heritage retail buyers a more of a customized approach as opposed to a generic online experience?
Right, so Farfetch is going to be doing two things with Harrods. The first thing is it's going to be creating Harrods.com so that if you're a Harrods customer, you can be recognized both in the store and online, and that you can shop the Harrods online as you would in the store, and it's a Harrods branded opportunity. And it is also taking all of the inventory in Harrods, putting it onto the inventory on Farfetch, and making it available to a consumer around the world. And there's two very different things. So in the end, Harrods, like any of the physical stores, get to focus on what they do best, which is to focus on the brick and mortar experience, focus on welcoming the customer, focus on the merchandising, on the store environment, which is, as I said before, not going away and really needs an enormous investment. And Farfetch powers the technology which allows the digital experience. In the end, Harrods owns their brand and their values, what they stand for, and Farfetch is the connector, a technology and a logistics connector. So I think what we're seeing is that people get to focus on what they do best. And Farfetch has truly empowered the next generation of retailing. Whether you're a boutique or a big department store or a brand, you can focus on serving your customer in store, in person, and behind the scenes, Farfetch is powering international digital commerce. It's very exciting.
Hi, you spoke earlier, hi. You spoke earlier about identifying opportunities and capitalizing on them. But when it comes to moving on from something as hugely successful as Net-a-Porter, how do you know that the time is right for the next venture?
Again, the time, when you know the time is right to do the next thing, is by following your intuition, observing the marketplace. And when Net-a-Porter was started, it was very important that we had one location and we had centralized inventory which we could ship to the world. And as the technology and e-commerce evolved, I realized that customers would want to have product delivered faster, and that there was all this inventory in our brand's partners' stores. And the stores were struggling. And they were marking things down. They were putting product on sale. I mean, they still are. And I was very worried that if high fashion just kept marking down the product, in the end, none of us would have anything to sell. So it became very important for me to rethink how to serve the customer, how to serve the brands. And what I felt was excitement at the next wave of consumer behavior. And I think when you become excited about what's next, I mean, it's in my character about always following the customer. You can't be afraid to leave something in the past. You have to. A friend of mine once told me, never make a decision based on fear. And I think that is something we can all apply in all of our lives, whether it's on a personal level or on a business level. I think too many businesses are afraid of losing their existing P&L if they change. But if they don't change, they will die. And I think that it's important as individuals not to be afraid that the next thing won't be as good as the last thing. And in fact, if you aren't afraid and you move forward, that is where the opportunity is. And I'm very much driven by what's next, how can we think out of the box, do things differently. It's what the consumer wants. It's where the opportunity is. So for me, there's no doubt that you have to move forward. And I'm now in a position where I can invest in people who also share that vision, who want to do what's next, and what's next, and what's next. And it's very exciting. Okay, one more? Yeah.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for the great advice you gave. My question is relating businesses that just started, and usually it takes businesses time to thrive. How do you face doubt that comes your way and make sure that this is worth pursuing?
Well, it's normal to have doubt when you start a new business. Doubt in yourself, doubt in your idea. But what differentiates the winners from the losers are the people who proceed even though they have doubt. You know, one of my favorite sayings is that courage is not the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of fear. So I think then you have to say, do I have doubt because actually I'm cutting corners or I'm not doing it as well as I should have? You know, we all work on something and we say, ooh, I don't know if I like this. If that's your response, then fix it. You know, if there's something in you that is telling you this is not good enough, just fix it. Make it better. Go to the point where you love it, where you think it's amazing. Then you will find that doubt quickly goes away, because if you love something and you can defend it, then you can market it and you can sell it. But if the doubt exists because it's not good enough, then it's clear you have to keep going until it's good enough. Sometimes that little voice inside of us tells us that a decision may be wrong, that the product is not good enough. You have to listen to yourself, and you are your own first critic, judge, consumer. And it can be good or bad, and listen to yourself. But don't have unnecessary doubt.
Not just from Harper's Bazaar. My question is, taste and habits may differ from region to region. What differences do you see between the Arab consumers and the European or American or Western consumers?
Well, I mean, one obvious difference here is that I don't see a lot of the fashion on show because it's covered up. And so if I were marketing here, you don't have that immediate, like, oh my God, everyone's wearing Balenciaga, which you have when you walk down the street in New York City. So I think there's a difference in how one has to market here, and obviously the marketing is happening peer-to-peer, you know, I'm certainly not an expert on how to market in the region. I think that each brand, every business, can start off by focusing on the market that they know, and then as you grow, you start hiring in experts in different regions. And it doesn't mean that you have to go to those markets. Today with digital, you can all be in one office. We were in London for a long time, serving 177 countries. We had our Japanese editor was sitting in the office in London. We had our German editor sitting in the office in London. So I think the way that we work can be a little bit different today, and that's a great opportunity, especially here where you have a lot of international students. But you do need to, if you want to grow in each market, you have to understand your local customer and the nuances.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you all. Hope you found this insightful. I think there were some things that we didn't get a chance to talk about, unfortunately, and maybe afterwards you're probably going to get swarmed, hopefully not. But we do want to take a group photo with Natalie. She's going to sit in the front, and they're going to take a photo of all of you so that they can capture that. And after that, there's going to be an iPad that's going around, and they would love for you to fill out that survey and give them your feedback on how the session went today. And so if you would just help me thank Ms. Massenet for being here this afternoon.